Good evening. I totally forgot I was doing this stream tonight. So I have to give credit to Mike, who usually comes on these streams. I had totally forgot about it. But then again, I mean, it's general basics that I'm going to be discussing. So it's not too hard, where I can have a summary and written documentation. Most of the stuff I'll be going over tonight is based on articles, documents, and files I have at my disposal. Um, Good evening, Bird. Good evening. Good to have you here. Um, well, the last video discussion was about American Airlines Flight 11, and tonight's discussion is going to be United Airlines Flight 175, and we're talking about the basics, the technical details of the flight. Um, Nothing too concerning. I mean, it's basically general details that a lot of people should know about. I mean, it's quite interesting to know that a lot of people still in the fringes of the 9/11 truth movement that still don't believe in planes being hijacked and crashing anywhere on 9/11. It still astonishes me to with a great deal. And by doing so, they do more harm than good because the amount of hoops that they have to jump through to try and make that a reality is uh, remarkable. It's stunning to me to see them try and do this, but they use speculation as a form of evidence. So that's the people I want to try and get through. I'm not speaking to an echo chamber. People who already know that Flight 175 was hijacked. I'm hoping tonight, with a little bit of reason and some uh, factual information I'll share, is a wake up call. And I'm not going to change anybody's mind right away. I just want you to think about your previously held beliefs, because I want you to have knowledge. I don't want you to have belief. Who's that? Mark Bolton. It's 4 a.m. The kid. Do these save to your channel? Yes, they do actually. When I'm done, it actually uploads to my video playlist. So if you have to, rest or go to sleep, I wanted to do this earlier, but I totally forgot about the stream, and I didn't want to be um, a disappointment to some who were um, counting on it or whatever. I usually do them like around 10 o'clock, 10:30. I don't know why I like doing a little bit evening hours, but I also notice that it is late and some people need to get up really early in the morning. But I am trying to be accommodating to people abroad, so that's why I do them like around 9, 10 o'clock. Maybe I should do them a little bit earlier. But I usually tend to have a decent crowd, 10, 11 people. For me, that's decent. Uh, I still can't believe 10 people actually watch me. Well, anyway, let's get to the basics about 175. Now, the United Airlines Flight 175, just to be technical, is a Boeing 767-200 series. The registration number is N612UA, and it was built by United Airlines in February of 1983. Now, the plane can hold up a capacity of 168 passengers, 10 in first class, 32 in business, and 126 in economy. Um, on September 11, 2001, the flight only carried 56 passengers and 9 crew, which represented approximately 33% of the load factor, which was well below the load factor of 49% in the months preceding September 11th. Um, The crew members are Captain Victor Saraceni, First Officer Michael Horrocks. The purser is Catherine Laboure, and the flight attendants are Robert Fangman, Amy Jarrett, Amy King, Alfred Marchand, Michael Tarot, and Alcia Titus. Good evening, Mike. Hey, glad to see you here. Thank you again for reminding me. I totally forgot, actually. But let's move on. Now, between the hours of 6:20 and 6:53, two brothers, Hamza and Ahmed Al-Ghamdi, would approach a customer service representative at the United Airlines ticket counter. Her name is Gail Jawahir. Her last name is Jawahir. Gail Jawahir. Now, these brothers, they don't speak English much. It's broken English, so they don't understand English that much. And when they went to the ticket counter, they said that they were having problems boarding the plane because they didn't have a ticket. Now, Jawahir actually looked and saw that they did have tickets and that they both had problems answering like standard security questions, and they didn't have very much in the way of reassuring answers. Jawahir actually reported to the FBI that she saw them shortly before 7 a.m. So that's why I said 6:20 to 6:53 a.m. because they arrived at 6:15 the parking lot. Now, after the events of September 11th, the FBI went to interview Jawahir and showed her the photographs of the 19 hijackers. And she indicated that two of the people that she encountered were, Mohand al-Shehhi and Fayez Ahmed Bani Hamad, who were on this plane. But she also said to them that these two guys had the same names. So that would be Ahmed and Hamza al-Ghamdi. So there's a little bit of a mix-up there because if she's shown the pictures of Ahmed and Hamza al-Ghamdi, why did she point to Mohand al-Shehhi and Faiz Ahmed Bani Hamad? Strange. And she also said that the two had assigned seats at row 9 of the plane, just like the brothers al-Shehhis in Flight 11. The al-Ghamdis also were in front row because these were the muscle hijackers. It's funny because the al-Shehhi brothers were the muscle hijackers for 11. The al-Ghamdi brothers are muscle hijackers for 175. And both Ahmed and Hamza al-Ghamdi checked in at 6:20 a.m. A little bit of discrepancy on Joey here. She could be mistaken, but keep that in mind. Now let's go back for a little bit because Ahmed al-Ghamdi and Hamza, they checked out of their hotel and they called a taxi to take them to Logan Airport. And they arrived at Terminal C at 6:20 a.m. And Ahmed al-Ghamdi checked in 2 bags. And what's his name? Hamza al-Ghamdi, he didn't have any checked luggage. Marwan al-Shehhi, the lead pilot, checks in a single bag at 6:45, and the other remaining muscle hijackers, Fayez Bani Hamad and Mohand al-Shehhi, they check in at 6:53 a.m. together, where Bani Hamad checked in 2 bags. Mohand al-Shehhi didn't have a bag. Now, unlike Flight 11, these guys were not selected for extra scrutiny by the Computer Assisted Passenger Pre-Screening System, or CAPS. None of these guys set off the extra security screening. They were run through the tip-off database, nothing. Now, Marwan al-Shehhi and the other muscle hijackers board between the. It's stated that they board between 7:23 and 7:28. Now, Fayez Bani Hamad, he boards first and sat in first class in seat 2A, and Mohan al-Shehhi seats at 2B. 7:27 a.m., Marwan al-Shehhi and Ahmed al-Ghamdi board and sat in business class at 6C and 9D. 9D is where Ahmed al-Ghamdi sits. 1 minute later, right behind them, Hamza al-Ghamdi boards and sits in 9C, right next to his brother. At 6:52 a.m., it's asserted by the 9/11 Commission report that a 3-minute call is made from a payphone at Bogan's Logan Airport. This is retrieved by the FBI. Now, this was near the gate where Flight 175 will later depart. Now, it was a call to Mohammed Atta's cell phone. And again, according to the 9/11 Commission report, it's stated in Chapter 2, where they say that they presumed Marwan al-Shehhi made the call, but they cannot be sure. Now, that's neither here nor there. Now, if he didn't, let's just say this is not a really big deal. Even if he made the call, he's calling Atta. Now, is he calling Atta to make sure that the operation goes through? That's more plausible. What else could he be talking about? Could he be talking about an anomaly that we don't know about that's taking place on the planes? Could be. We don't know. And there are other reports like the New York Times and Time Magazine. New York Times reports on this November 4th of 2001, and Time Magazine on August 4th, 2002, where they said that they later speak again briefly by cell phone while waiting for their plane to take off. Now, I'm asserting that they got their information from the FBI because they're the ones who are involved with the investigation, because the crime is air piracy. Now, remember that, because a lot of truthers get this wrong, is that, the National Transportation Safety Board is supposed to investigate matters where the planes had crashed. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Now, in the cases of accidents, sure, where they don't know what happened, could it be engine failure? Could it be mechanical failure? Electrical failure? But with 9/11, it was pretty obvious what happened here. The planes were hijacked and they crashed, and that is air piracy. The name of the crime is air piracy, and that's a federal crime. So the FBI takes in charge. Now, the plane was supposed to take off at 8 a.m. And the plane pushed back. It got approval from it got approval from air traffic control, in which I'm going to play the audio.
United 175 Heavy, runway 9er, cleared for takeoff. Traffic holding in position on 4 right.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 9er, United 175 Heavy.
US Air 6511, Vossar, caution, wait turbines departing heavy, Boeing 767, runway 9er, taxiing in position hold. Traffic will depart, runway 4 right.
Position hold 9, 6511.
Okay, so you heard air traffic control get in contact with Captain Victor Saracini, about having a cleared for takeoff. Reason why I'm playing these audios is that it's more evidence for the people I'm trying to get through, because they claim that these planes didn't exist, or they didn't, they weren't at the airport. Well, I'm playing the ATC recording, which is publicly available. It's on YouTube. But if you want the audio, I would go to archive.org and download the audio file from there. I don't know where else the audio could be, although I would say Clear Audio would be archive.org. They have an enormous collection of audio and video that is really hard to get. It's the best, one of the most underappreciated websites on planet Earth. It is a literally history lesson waiting at your fingertips. Now, when it took off at 8:14 a.m. from runway 9. And air traffic control is actually from Boston Center, by the way. Air traffic control Boston Center instructs Flight 175 and Captain Saraceni and the first officer to change frequencies to Boston Center, the same frequency that American 11 used.
United 175, covering Boston Center 127.82.
2782, United 175.
Okay, so now they're on the same frequency as Boston Center. There's a direct line to air traffic control. Now, with none of these planes, am I going to give a definitive answer as to exactly when the hijacking took place? It is alleged that Flight 175 was hijacked somewhere between 8:42 and 8:46 a.m. And that is a mere, 7 minutes from when Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower. Now, I want to be careful because the sources, the flight path study of Flight 175, but they can't be sure. And the 9/11 Commission report, you take with a grain of salt. Not everything is right, but not everything is wrong. There's a lot more missing than there is both. So how they could know who forced into the cockpit is anybody's guess. But according to the 9/11 Commission report, it's Fayez Bani Hamad and Mohammed al-Shehhi. And they forced themselves into the cockpit and attacked the pilots, while the Al-Ghamdi brothers, Hamza and Ahmed, they get the passengers and the crew to the back of the cabin. And then Mohammed al-Shehhi, he gets up and goes to the cockpit to take control of the plane. Now, it's alleged by the phone calls of two people that knives were used to stab the flight crew and kill both of the pilots. Hey, good day, good evening, Tyler Durden and Marcavius Fontavis. Hope I said it right. So there's the problem, right? Because we don't know how those knives got on the plane. Did they mean box cutters, or did they mean knives? Now, if that's the case, the knives were planted on the plane because they were, or I'm sorry, that may not be true because no, that could be true because none of them had carry-on luggage that I know of. They had luggage, but that's right, 2 bags were checked in, but they weren't carry-on bags. So these knives were actually, they could have been planted. Now that's not too far out of speculation because I don't want to delve off into it, but I'll mention this briefly. On September 10th of 2001, according to Eric Gill, who's a Argent Bright security guard working the evening shift near the security gate that leads to the tarmac where the planes are being prepped for the next day, he notices 5 men. 3 of them were wearing really dirty airline ramp working clothing, and 2 were just civilian clothes. And they got through the first security checkpoint because one of them had a badge. 3 of them had badges. The 2 did not. So now the only other door was where Eric Gill was standing, and they didn't have the security checkpoint for there. And they said that they were yelling at Eric Gill, saying, "We have to get through. We're important people." Well, they didn't get through, and they walked away. They cursed at Eric Gill. Now, after September 11th, days later, Eric Gill sees pictures of the hijackers on a magazine while he's out shopping with his wife, and he gets called in and interviewed by the FBI. and he put out these pictures of the hijackers. He tells them this story, and he says, "Could you point out, the guys that were doing it?" And he pointed out two pictures, and it was Marwan al-Shehhi and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Now, al-Hazmi is a hijacker for 77, but Marwan al-Shehhi is the hijacker for 175, the pilot hijacker. And that's interesting because what were they doing there? Were they checking out security? Probably. Were they trying to get on the plane to plant weapons? Probably. In the days after September 11th on CNN, somewhere between September 14th and 17th, it is stated by CNN that they found box cutters taped to the backs of food trays, knives underneath seats. And of course, I told you before, there was a report of a gun on Flight 11, but how that report is verified, I'm not too sure. But according to the official account by the 9/11 Commission report and the FAA, no gun was found on Flight 11. Okay, so the hijacking takes place. And, I just want to make it clear that there was one last transmission that Flight 175 made to Boston Center.
New York, United 175, heavy.
United 175, go ahead.
We figured we'd wait to go to your center. We heard a suspicious transmission on our departure out of Boston with someone, sounded like someone keyed the mic and said, everyone stay in your seats.
Oh, okay. I'll pass that along over here.
It's cut out.
That was Victor Saraceni, and he heard the audio transmission from Muhammad Atta on Flight 11 that they had some planes. Now there's a real horrifying aspect because after that transmission, Flight 175 is hijacked. Okay. At 8:41 a.m., another transmission is made from 175. I'm sorry, just before the hijacking. I think it's important. That again, they heard Atta transmit again. And according to the 9/11 Commission report, just a mere 2 minutes later, they're hijacked. Dave Battaglia, who's at Boston Center, is trying to relay a message to 175 and gets no answer. And at the same time, they're trying to deal with a hijacking, even though it's from another airline, and they're getting conflicting reports about what's going on. Is it an actual hijack yet? And there's a lot of confusion now. Now, I can understand there could be a lot of confusion. Now, of course, the fringe conspiracy theorists are basically saying that this is a simple procedure. FAA shouldn't be confused about a plane that may not be a plane, that could be CGI and whatnot. Well, if it's CGI and they're not going to see it on the radar. If it's an actual hijacking, then they got to track that plane. If there's another hijacking, now they got to get another spotter to track that plane. You get it? Multiple hijackings, we got a problem. Turn off the transponder, and now you don't even have the altitude of the planes. And now you really got to keep your eye on the dot, because as soon as you do that, you got to find it in a sea of dots, because that's where all the planes are. There are literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of planes flying in the continental United States. Soon after Flight 175 is hijacked, a report comes in to Boston Center that and it's from Delta 1489, that they see a lot of smoke in lower Manhattan. And that's Flight 11 crashing into the North Tower.
Anybody know what that smoke is in lower Manhattan?
I'm sorry, say again?
A lot of smoke in lower Manhattan.
A lot of smoke in lower Manhattan?
Coming out of the top of the World Trade Center building, the major fires. Yeah.
So, now, Boston Center is trying to get in contact with 175. And at around this same time, the hijackers, presumably Marwan al-Shehhi, changes the squawk code to 3321.
Yeah, 175. Recycle your transponder and score code of 1470. United 175, New York. United 175, do you read New York?
No return answer. At 8:47 a.m., the New York flight controller, Dave Battaglia, I'm sorry, I said he's in Boston Center. He's a flight controller out of New York. And he's in charge of specifically monitoring flights 11 and 175 now. And he just watched Flight 11's radar blip disappear. But he doesn't realize the plane crashed into the World Trade Center, the North Tower. Within seconds of that blip disappearing, 175 disappears. And now he has another controller in New York take over all his other planes so he can focus on finding just 175 in the sea of dots that I told you about, right? So he's got to find the plane without the altitude and without the technical details on the screen. He tries contacting other planes that are nearby, but they're unsuccessful. The other flight controller is Kurt Applegate, and he's sitting at the radar screen right next to Dave Battaglia. And he sees a blip that might belong to Flight 11, but it is 175. And just as Battaglia notices it, its transponder signal turns right back on, but at a different signal than before. And according to MSNBC, and I'll quote you, there is no longer any question in Battaglia's mind that he's looking at a second hijacked airliner, end quote. And now Battaglia sees it deviate from because it was going to LAX, heading east and start descending. And he keeps an eye on it and sees it head right toward Delta 2315. And he is trying to call Delta 21315 because he's actually going to crash into it. So they called Delta 3125 and they tell him traffic 10 miles. I think he's hijacked. I don't know his intentions. Take any evasive action necessary. And the pilots at flight 2315 moved 90 degrees to the east, missing 175 by less than 200 feet. 175 almost crashed right into this plane. Now, what happened here? The plane was going so fast. It was about 300 miles an hour at this point, not going the full 500 yet. They were speeding up and descending at the same time. Now, while they're descending, they are just going straight. And the other planes that are going west wherever they're going. I don't know where 2315 was going. They didn't hear over the radio because nobody at FAA or at Boston Center know exactly where this plane is going because they turned off the transponder. You understand? So they don't know where he's going. And by the time he put back on the transponder, it's almost much too late. Now, what does that say about the pilot, Marwan al-Shehhi, who's allegedly piloting the plane? Why is he so close to the other plane? Couldn't tell you. I'm sorry. And I just pulled it up too. I pulled up an article by the Washington Post where Delta Airlines Flight 2315 was flying from Hartford, Connecticut to Tampa. So, all right. I don't know if that's important, but he wasn't going west. He was actually going southeast. So I was wrong about that. I don't like to be wrong. I try to be as correct as possible. Now, that wasn't all, because at the same time, now Dave Battaglia is looking with Applewhite, and Boston Center is now seeing that another plane, Midwest Express Flight 7, which was flying from Milwaukee to New York, is almost 300 feet away from 175. So they're actually calling 170 Midwest Airlines, and they're saying, deviate, go to your right, the west, go to your right. We think 175 is a hijack. And they get out of the way. I don't know the distance, but they said it was anywhere between 150 to 200 feet. Again, close. So that's two planes. 175 almost crashed into. And that's coming from Delta Flight 2315, as well as Midwest Express Flight 7. If you want to read more about the specifics of this, there's a great book by Lynn Spencer called Touching History, the untold story of the drama that unfolded in the skies over America on 9/11. Really good book. It was written in 2008. I have it. Very good. And also The 11th Day, another book that I have by Anthony Summers. It's a much more fuller book, really detailed. Those two books are really good. There's very few 9/11 books I would actually prefer. Those two are very good, actually. Okay, now, while this is going on, let's talk about what's happening inside the plane, right? So, flight attendant Robert Fangman and the passengers, Peter Hansen and Brian David Sweeney, they would make phone calls from a GT Air phone in the rear of the aircraft. None of these are cell phone calls. And also, there was another. I always forget. This is really hard. It's really hard to remember. Garrett Bailey. Is Garrett Bailey. He also made a phone call from the airphone. It's 4 people. The flight attendant Robert Fangman at 8:52. He calls United Airlines maintenance office in San Francisco and speaks with Mark Policastro. And Fangman, this is coming from the FBI reports from the phone calls. Fangman actually reports the hijacking and said that the hijackers were likely flying the plane. He also said both of the pilots were dead, the first officer and the captain, and that a flight attendant had been stabbed. I don't know if that's the purser, because she's carrying the key to the cockpit, or it's a flight attendant. And after a minute and 15 seconds, Fangman's call is disconnected. Mark Policastro, he then calls. He makes an attempt to call aircraft communication addressing and reporting systems, which is the ACARS messaging system. And he would later write in a report that, quote, "I heard of a reported incident aboard your craft. Please verify all is normal." That's what he wrote in the ACARS message to Flight 175, but he got no answer, of course, because the hijackers are in the plane. Brian David Sweeney, he tries calling his wife Julia at 8:59 a.m., but he ended up leaving a message telling her that the plane had been hijacked. He then calls his parents at 9 a.m. and spoke with his mother, Louise Sweeney, which, by the way, you can read all of these on the FBI 302 reports, which are available on scrib.com, or you could go to my WordPress, which is available through my Twitter profile. Just go to the pinned area and you'll link to my WordPress and type in the search bar, type in whatever you want to hear from phone calls, because I have it detailed where the names, the dates, so this way you can specifically find what you need to look for in regards to pertinent information, factual information. Now, he told his mother about the hijacking and mentions that the passengers were going to think about storming the cockpit, much like Flight 93 did. While he's talking to her, Sweeney said he thought the hijackers might come back, so he might have to hang up really quick. But then he said goodbye to his mother, and he quickly hung up. At 8:52 a.m., Peter Hansen called his father, Lee Hansen, and told him of the hijacking. Now, Peter Hansen was traveling with his wife, Sue, and their 2-year-old daughter, Christine. By the way, that is the youngest victim of September 11th on board these planes. Peter placed his call from an airphone at seat 30E, even though he was seated in row 19. But because they got herded in the back, that's where he made the call from. Now, Hansen was speaking really, really soft, and he said that the hijackers had commanded the plane, and that a flight attendant had been stabbed, and then somebody else in the front of the aircraft had been killed, but he doesn't know who. And he said that he also said the plane was also flying very erratically. Now, this is probably from evading the other planes and crashing into them. I don't know. And what Peter did was he told his father to contact United Airlines, but Lee could not get through to them, and instead he called the police. Now, at 9 a.m., according to the FBI's 302 report, Peter Hansen makes a second phone call to his father. And I'll quote you from the 302. "It's getting bad, Dad. A stewardess was stabbed. They seem to have knives and mace. They said they have a bomb. It's getting very bad on the plane. Passengers are throwing up and getting sick. The plane is making jerky movements. I don't think the pilot is flying the plane. I think we are going down. I think they intend to go to Chicago or someplace and fly into a building. Don't worry, Dad. If it happens, it'll be very fast. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God." And the call abruptly hangs up, and the last thing Hansen's father hears is a woman screaming, whether it's his wife, Peter Hansen's wife, or some other woman. Now, again, Boston Center New York Center is trying to contact Flight 175. And there is no answer. They never answer. There's no mixed recordings like Muhammad Atta did on 11, where he used instead of using the cabin recording, he used the radio recording, which was heard by other airplanes and air traffic control, and as well as Boston Center. These guys didn't make any announcements except for whatever they announced on the plane, which wasn't heard, allegedly. So while the plane is flying erratically, New York Center is now getting worried, saying this might be a potential hijack. They still don't know yet.
Delta 2315. Delta 2315, turn left immediately to a heading of 200.
Left turn immediately, 200, Delta 2315.
Roger. Traffic, 1 o'clock, 10 miles, turning into your face, descending out of 31. It's a hijacked aircraft. We don't know what he's doing.
2315.
US Air 542, turn left, heading 200.
The first recording of the hijacking for 175. Now, New York Center tracks 175 using the code 3321 and mistakenly identifies it as an American Airlines aircraft. That was the squawk code that one of the hijackers used for this plane. And New York Center again begins to ask other aircraft in the area to try and identify 175 as they are not squawking the correct code and that there's no information on the aircraft. Here's the recording.
2315, can you tell me what kind of aircraft it is and whose company?
He's going behind us, sir. I'm going to try to get a good look at him. Delta 2315.
US Air 542, you see him there at 12 o'clock and 5 eastbound, 28 and 8?
Affirmative. We got an RA on him. We're leveling here.
Okay, you can, US Air 542, fly heading at 290 now, radar vectors for your climb.
290, US Air 542.
Your Delta.
Okay. So, with it finally being labeled a hijack, at 8:50 a.m., two F-15 fighters are ordered to scramble from Otis National Guard Base in Massachusetts to try and flight Flight 11 because that hijacking was reported. Then it went to, from Boston Center, they called the Operations Center. The Operations Center then called Needs. And they, Otis Air Force Base. I'm sorry, not Otis Air Force Base. I think it's Troy. And they asked them to fly some scrambled planes up there, but they're a National Guard base, not a NORAD base. So these two planes are trying to fly Flight 11. Nobody knows about 175 yet. Nobody from Otis Air Force Base or from Troy or NORAD. Nobody knows. According to some reports, it depends on who you read. It's either coming from the 9/11 Commission report or a BBC article written on September 1st, 2002, that the Otis fighters only take off 6 minutes after the scramble order. Usually it's quicker. And there's also, I got to also inform you, there are also reports from the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and you would have to get that from scrib.com. I don't think I have those reports uploaded on WordPress, but you could try. But the Needs Commander, now after 11 crashed into the North Tower, the Needs Commander, Robert Marr, he later claims that the intent was to scramble Otis to military airspace to find out what was going on. Well, I mean, they're being told that there's a hijacking taking place. Remember that audio I played? Is this real world or exercise? Right? They find out it's an actual hijacking. So they can't feign ignorance and say, we don't know what's going on. There is a report of a hijacking coming out of Boston Center. It's not the case for 175. New York Center does not call Otis or Needs. Ed Ballinger, who's the United Airlines flight dispatcher and who's handling approximately like 20 transcontinental flights, including 175 and 93, after hearing that 11 crashed into the North Tower, he contacts all the flights to warn them, which was huge. But at this time, it's too late for 175 because, according to Ballinger, the plane was not acting appropriately and doesn't respond. So he concludes that 175 is hijacked. Now, whether he contacts anyone else about his conclusions is unclear, just like with 11. Remember when I told you about American Airlines operations center where they were saying that don't tell anybody, let's keep it under wraps? Now, even after all this, it's now apparent that the managers at United Airlines in Chicago are unaware of any unfolding emergency until they turn on the TV and see, I think it was CNN or Fox. They turn on TV and see what's going on. Within minutes of doing that, United headquarters gets a call from the Federal Aviation Administration stating that the plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, and it was an American Airlines plane. And around that same time, they get another call about a flight that will, according to manager Jim Goodwin, who's the United Airlines chairman and their chief executive, he gets a call from New York Center, and he says, "Boss, we lost contact with one of the planes, 175." And at around that same time, 1 minute later, a United dispatcher reports that 175 has been lost, although it's not clear whether that is a clarification of the earlier message or a change in the timing that one call occurred. Rich Miles, who's the manager of United Chicago System Operations Center, he's the one who got the call from I just said his name, Mark Policastro. It just came to my head. Comes a little bit late, so just to remember, I like to be as technical as possible, detailed as possible. I don't like to be vague, especially when we're trying to reach an audience that has vague beliefs. So by using names, by using articles, by using files and documents, I'm trying to give evidence for my statements and not speculation. You understand where I'm coming from, right? So hopefully I'm being very clear and not confusing at all. At 8:52 a.m., the F-15 fighters that fly out of Otis have a little bit of confusion regarding what plane they're going after. According to one account, pilot Lieutenant Colonel Timothy Duffy says, "We've been over the flight 1,000 times in our minds, and I don't know what we could have done to get there any quicker." However, though Duffy says he's been warned that Flight 11 had been hijacked and appears headed toward New York City, yet he doesn't realize that his flight is anything other than a routine exercise. Remember that mix-up between real world and exercise? According to a quote that he made on September 1st, 2002 at the BBC, it's just peacetime. We're not thinking anything real as bad is going to happen out there. Meanwhile, it's the hijacking. Now, in another account, Duffy claims that a fellow officer tells him before takeoff, "This looks like the real thing." Read the words, "looks like the real thing." And he then tells him it just seems wrong. But we just have to get there real fast. Now, they're flying at ridiculous speeds. Now, F-15, just to let you know, an F-15 at max speed could reach 1,875 miles an hour, which is incredible. I'm actually going to look for Mach speed. 2.4 Mach speed, which is unbelievable. That is incredible. I had to look that up. Now, Duffy tells his wingman on the F-15 that they're going to fly supersonic, and that when they took off, he left it in full afterburner the whole time. And that they're to proceed to Manhattan directly and set up combat air patrol. Now, of course, just like with everything about NORAD needs and air defense, there are different accounts as to just how fast they travel. Now, according to Major General Paul Weaver, who's the director of the Air National Guard, the pilots were topping 500 miles an hour, but were unable to catch up to the airliner. And that's coming from the Dallas Morning Star at September 16, 2001. ABC News reports the fighters are hurtling toward New York at Mach 1.2, and that's approximately 900 miles an hour. And that's coming from ABC News, September 11, 2002. NORAD commander, Major General Larry Arnold, he'll state that the fighters head straight to New York City at speeds of over 1,000 to 1,200 miles an hour. And that's coming from the article I'm reading. I could give you two: MSNBC on September 23rd, 2001, Slate, January 16, 2002. So, but why am I giving you different speeds for this? Because that's so important. Okay, according to the 9/11 Commission report, the fighter jets were just minutes behind 175, crashing into the South Tower. Now, if they are going at full Mach speed, they might have had a chance to intercepting, not shooting down, because they don't have hot guns in these planes. They might have tried intercepting that plane, either crashing into it, clipping its wings, or whatever, which is what they wanted to do with Flight 93. I'll talk about that in the live discussion. But they wanted to intercept this plane. Now, if they were traveling at Mach 2.4, I think they probably would have made it. Because remember, Flight 175 wasn't reaching 500 miles an hour until the point of impact. That's just, what is that, approximately 600 feet. Then they gunned it. Okay? So they were traveling at 350 to 375 miles an hour. That's coming from the flight data recorder, radar recorded from the NTSB report, which is publicly available. So if they were traveling at, say, 300, let's even say 375, if those F-15s were traveling at least 1,000 miles an hour, not even full, okay, they probably would have intercepted it or gotten near it at least. I'm going to try, you know what, to be a little bit more technical, I'm going to read from the North American Aerospace Defense Command report dated September 18, 2001, just to elucidate my previous point, all right? Now, this is coming from the report. An average speed of 1,125 miles per hour, the fighters would reach the city in 10 minutes. That's 9:02 a.m. What time does 175 crash? 9:03. 1 minute for an F-15 fighter is an enormity. If NORAD Commander Larry Arnold's recollection is correct, these fighters should reach 175 just before it crashes, like I said before. Yet, according to a NORAD timeline developed just after 9/11, the fighters take about 19 minutes to reach New York City, traveling well below supersonic speeds at less than 600 miles an hour. According to another account, now I'm going to pull this up. According to another account, the fighters weren't even heading toward Manhattan, contradicting the earlier recollection from pilot Timothy Duffy that they were going supersonic speed to Long Island. And later on, Duffy would say, "We have no idea what we are going towards. We are taking off to go help somebody, and we needed to get there quickly to assess the situation." So what am I telling you? Okay? I'm telling you that they're given vague information on purpose, whether you want to believe it's on purpose or not, all right? I'm just saying it could be speculation that they were given vague information on purpose, who they were chasing, why they were chasing them, and where they are technically. Now, the FAA basically don't have the altitude of the plane. Remember, the transponder was turned off. So they're going by radar signal. So they know the plane is hijacked because they're not calling New York controller anymore. They know what happened to Flight 11. So they're rushing this operation. They're rushing them, say, hey, listen, you got to get to New York. You got to get to Manhattan. But is that information being relayed to the F-15 pilots? Whoever's relaying that information to them didn't tell them the specifics. Or the FAA was lying to them, or they misinterpreted the message. See what I mean about belief and knowledge? This leads you into a state of paralysis, exactly where they wanted them to be. Indecisiveness. They don't know what to take, where to turn, where to look, who to look for. What do you mean? And by the time they know what's happening, it's too late. And nobody's blamed and nobody's the wiser. So, what happens? The plane approaches New York City. Marwan al-Shehhi would have definitely have seen the fire and smoke pouring out of the North Tower if he's flying the plane. That means that plane was successful, which means that it's now up to him to be successful if he's flying the plane. Or he could be flying the plane and the plane's remotely guided. Plausible scenario. I can't prove it. Nobody can. The aircraft makes a banking left turn in its final moments. Now, everyone's seen the video because there is now so many cameras pointing to the World Trade Center, and every news video, news agency is pointing at the North Tower at this point, including the people in this room who probably remember what was going on. All of a sudden, as the plane appears, the plane might have otherwise, when it made that banking turn, it almost missed the South Tower. By banking it, the people who are on the left side of the plane would have had a clear view of the towers approaching with one burning. Now, just imagine if you're in that plane and you're making that turn, you could see the North Tower on fire. So that means, unlike Flight 11, where the people had no idea whether they got, what was coming ahead of them, that wasn't the case with 175. Because by making that banking turn, which we all saw, they saw the North Tower. They knew exactly what was going to happen to them, even though it's just a mere seconds. But still, that horror of finality and the way it's going to happen. At 9:01, just 2 minutes before the impact, it continues descent into Lower Manhattan. New York Center alerts another nearby air traffic control facility, which was monitoring aircraft over New Jersey, about what was happening here. New York Center basically gets the call and sees what happens.
Hogan 5981, climb and maintain flight level 200.
Any chance to 180?
Yeah, maintain flight level 180.
I do, thank you.
Hey, East Texas 93. 1899, this is Seattle. With a handoff, 91 Bravo Zulu.
Continental 211, maintain flight level 280.
Maintain 280, Continental 211.
Continental 211, contact New York 134.32.
3432, Continental 211, good day.
Good day.
New York, Texas 193 is 14,000 climbing 17,000. Elizabeth from NASA sector says hi.
New York Center, are you there?
193, New York Center, Roger. I'll hot fire for you in just a moment.
Roger.
Cactus 193, can you guys see the city from behind you there?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Looks like the World Trade Center's on fire.
Yes, it's a Boeing 757 we think just flew into the building.
You're not kidding, right?
No, I'm not kidding.
Oh, shit.
Yes, sir. Cactus 193, climb and maintain flight level 280.
Flight level 28. Pardon me, I'm just got 280 Texas. Whatever I have, 193.
Cactus 1.
Okay. So 175 at 9:03 crashes nose first into the southern facade of the South Tower at 513 miles an hour, striking between floors 77 and 85. It was holding approximately 9,100 gallons of fuel, which is approximately 72,000 pounds. Multiple videos exist showing 175 crashing into the South Tower. When the plane penetrated into fragments, which basically caused by the explosion and then the G-force behind it, the enormity of the explosion shot straight through the South Tower. And in one video, I think it's from Scott Myers, which I have uploaded, it is the best video I've seen to date that shows the clear picture and clear audio of the plane impacting the South Tower. And not only that, you can actually see the landing gear shoot straight out into Church Street near West Broadway. And part of the plane's landing gear and the fuselage came out the north side of the tower and crashed through the roof and 2 floors of 4547 Park Place, which is between West Broadway and Church Street, which is 600 feet north of the World Trade Center. I don't think I have to tell you that everyone died on the plane. They actually would find human remains of Flight 175 scattered all throughout Lower Manhattan at a 10-block radius, north, south, east, and west. Everyone knows what happens. And flight controllers in Newark, New Jersey, who are on the phone, ear to ear, with flight controllers from New York, and they're asked, New York is desperately asking New Jersey for help. According to Rick Tepper, who is at New Jersey, Newark, Airport, Newark, before 175 crashed into the South Tower, someone from New York Control Center actually asks him to find Flight 175 from their windows. Now, air traffic control at Newark has a clear view of Lower Manhattan. They're right across the river. And Rick Tepper, according to him, says that he saw the plane crash directly into the South Tower. And I'll read you his quote, which you can find on an MSNBC article, September 11, 2002. Quote, he was in a right hard bank, driving very steeply and very fast. And he, as he was coming up the Hudson River, made another hard left turn and just heading for downtown Manhattan, you could see that he was trying to line himself up on the tower. Just before he hit the tower, he almost leveled it out and just hit the building. He almost missed it. End quote. When 175 hit the South Tower, a pilot from NORAD, Major Daniel Nash, he has stated on record that because of the clear visibility, it allowed him to see smoke pouring out of Manhattan, even though he's 71 miles away. The guy I spoke about, Lieutenant Colonel Timothy Duffy, he said he was 60 miles out and he could see the smoke from the towers. They called NORAD right then for an update, and Duffy relates at some point that the second aircraft just hit the World Trade Center. So they were approximately 60 miles away, which is, by the way, for an F-15, it's seconds. I'm sorry, maybe a minute. Maybe a little bit less. The 9/11 Commission report will later conclude that New York Flight Control told Needs that Flight 175 had been hijacked at exactly 9:04 a.m. The Commission now refers to this as the first indication that the NORAD air defenders had of the second aircraft. Now, tape recordings of the Needs operations floor reveal, now this is also available at archive.org. I have the whole audio uploaded, and it is hours and hours of a droning signal, because that's what the signal makes. And then you hear the voices, but they're few and far between. But it's the actual audio from Needs. The ID tech is Stacia Roundtree, and she's answering the call from New York Center and says out loud they have a second possible hijack. Colonel Robert Moore, who I spoke about before, the head of Needs, claims that he first learns a flight other than 11 had been hijacked when he sees 175 crash into the South Tower. So that right there should tell you that there's a disconnect between New York Center, Otis Air Force Base, Needs, as well as the Operations Center of New York, United Airlines. All four basically not in fluidity. All four giving different timelines. All four reacting differently. Was it because of the confusion of the previous hijack of 11? Was it that the specifics weren't known to each other or weren't elucidated to each other in a proper and responsible manner? If you're a fringe conspiracy theorist, all these people are liars. That's not rational. Because we can discern that we know for a fact that certain organizations and certain entities had gotten specific, correct information. But because that information was not transmitted to another agency or to another entity, say needs, or to the operations center, or to New York Center, or to the FAA, nobody is getting informed about what that information is and what is true and what is false, where they are not. Do you see how I make it so important regarding belief and knowledge? You're led in a state of paralysis. When it comes to information, there is no paralysis. Now, the information regarding Flight 175 was not clear. The difference is, was it not made clear on purpose, or was it not made clear because of incompetence, or just general misunderstanding of the information? But because there is a number of different entities at play here, we really can't put a blame on a specific person. Now, to be a little bit more detailed regarding air defense, we can say that those planes, even if they flew at Mach speeds of 2.4, which is 1,800 miles an hour, what were they going to do if they got to 175? Let's just play the scenarios in our heads. These weapons don't have a shoot down authority because Cheney is not in contact with Bush just yet. He's just flying in Air Force One. So they didn't get any feedback from him. Rumsfeld, I don't know if Cheney actually calls Rumsfeld. Whether they were talking while Cheney's at the PIOC, was Rumsfeld in the briefing room? I don't know. I don't know the timelines in my head right away. So I can't make that assertion because Rumsfeld can give a shoot down order because he's in the military chain of command if Bush can't. So if he's not talking to Bush, if he's not talking to Rumsfeld, the shoot down order goes to NORAD. But NORAD doesn't make that decision because they're trying to get in contact with who? President Bush. But since President Bush is on Air Force One and his phone really doesn't work clear, guess who's the only one by the phone? The vice president, who is not part of the military chain of command. There's your conspiracy. Does he give a shoot down order or does he not? I don't know. Couldn't tell you for sure. But even if they got there, even if the F-15s got there in time, what were they going to do with 175? Were they going to crash into it? Were they going to clip its wings? Either way, 175 seemed to be doomed. But they did not reach the high speeds that they could have, according to the reports I just offered to you during the discussion previously. That much is for certain. Now, whether they were told not to get there in a hurry, whether they were told there was conflicting accounts, there were. So what is true and what is not? When it comes to specific blames here, we really don't know. I think they could have gotten there in time, and maybe they could have clipped 175. But they didn't. They flew well below the speeds allotted to those planes, which is the reason why I made it pertinent to tell you about the capacity of an F-15 plane and how fast it could go and how much ground they could cover. I'll take a question if you need be, but other than that, I think I can end it here. Now, I'll read you an extra thing I found on this book written by Filson. Oh, what's the name of that book again? I have to look it up. Oh, it's called Air War Over America. September 11 alters face of air defense mission. This is an extremely hard book to get. In fact, there's only one available on Amazon, and it's $100. I'm going to read you what it says there on page 75. A fighter pilot flying from Otis Air Force Base towards New York later notes that it wouldn't have mattered if he caught up to Flight 175 because only President Bush could order a shoot-down. According to a 1999 CNN report dated October 26th, only the president has the authority to order a civilian aircraft to be shot down. In fact, by 9/11, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld also has the authority to order a shoot-down, but he is not responding to the crisis at this time. Wonder why. Furthermore, NORAD Commander Larry Arnold later states that on 9/11, I have the authority in case of an emergency to declare a target hostile and shoot it down under an emergency condition. What did I tell you before? That the military chain of command goes like the president, the Secretary of Defense, and NORAD. Mike, you go ahead. You can ask a question. So that's the shoot down order of command. Rumsfeld actually, I forgot the name of the order he gave himself regarding military chain of command. It happened in 2001. I want to say it was weeks prior. I forgot the name of it. But yeah, I'll ask any questions. All right. Slightly off topic. I was just curious about your thoughts, reaction to Philip Zelikow heading up the bipartisan COVID commission. Yeah, I heard he is, which would mean that he wouldn't be influenced by the Bush administration, right? But of course, he has experience in selecting information that can be used as evidence for a specific incident. Now, look, Philip Zelikow had a number of interviews that he conducted, and one of them I interviewed personally myself, which was Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer regarding a Defense Intelligence Agency program called Able Danger, and it was a metadata collection which was conducted by the Land Information Warfare Activities Division, and another person I interviewed was Eric Kleinsmith, who was part of the LEWA operations that did the technical data regarding metadata collection. And Schaefer actually, and this was a very covert operation, by the way. And so Schaefer was the first person out of the Able Danger team to tell a civilian, Philip Zelikow, about the operation. And Zelikow says, this is great news. I'm going to use it in the report. And basically gave him his card because he was in Afghanistan at the time Schaefer was. When Schaefer returned to the United States in 2003, he tried to call Philip Zelikow, and Zelikow wouldn't return his calls. And basically, Schaefer went to Congressman Kurt Weldon, a Republican out of Pennsylvania, and he told Weldon about this story. And Weldon actually called the 9/11 Commission staffer, Chris Kojum, and Weldon's staffer talked to Chris Kojum's staffer and said, "Hey, do you know anything about Anthony Schaefer?" And he says, "Yeah, we heard about Anthony Schaefer. We know that Zelikow spoke with him." And he says, "Why didn't you use his story in the commission report?" Because the report's already published. And Chris Kojum's staffer basically said this: "We decided not to use Schaefer's report because it didn't line up with the story we wanted to tell." How about that? They already had the story that they wanted to tell. And it came from the selective testimony of the CIA, the FBI, and the hardly information sharing NSA, which is the agency everybody should be talking about. regarding 9/11. So, Mike, when I tell you that he's a perfect representative for that, he is, because he'll have selective information he'll share if they have a final report. So, I think I'll end it there. And so I wish you all a good night. And next week, I'll do another live video discussion regarding American Airlines Flight 77. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you very much. Have a good night.